Can you guys believe it? We have made it to week 8, module 8. It has just flown by. This is crazy to me. Let's take a look at module 8, what you need to be doing this week, our final week together. And this is making your argument count. This is where we do the persuasive paper, the argumentative essay. Remember, we talked before about the idea that persuasion and argument are very similar. Argument is this is my point and this is how I want to do it. Persuasion is where you try to move someone else's mind, someone else's opinion. You want somebody to act on what you're saying. So I think that, for us, what we're doing, I'm using them interchangeably. I think when you go into a lot of your other classes, they will be using those interchangeably. So I just kind of want you to get used to that. But there is a difference between those two. We're looking at module 8, making your argument count. This is here's what I believe and why and how. And this is what supports my position. This is what backs me up, right? It's all about backing up your position, proving your point, supporting your point. It's all about providing that evidence so that your audience understands not just what you're saying, but why you're saying it, how you got there. Okay, that's the big key here. So module 8, making your arguments count. It's about constructing that argument. It's not just enough to say I believe blank, but it's about how you say that, how you present it, and what kind of proof you provide. So you have a look here of our learning materials, our assignments, and our course objectives. Outside of the different activities and stuff, some of the big things that we're looking at is the peer responses, and you should be working on that already at the beginning of the week. Uh, that you posted your half draft last week. When you submitted your half draft, you also submitted a copy of that to this discussion board. So this week you should be commenting on each other's. One of the things I love about peer responses is that, first off, you're getting feedback from people like you. They're doing the same assignment, they're coming at it the same way, they're at the same ability level, they're looking at it the same way you did. I love that part. I also think peer reviews are really good, peer response are really good because it allows you to see what other people did, how other people did it, and then you can start to say, okay, this worked for me. Can I incorporate that into my writing? This didn't work for me. Why not? Is this something I need to avoid? As you are looking at other people's half drafts, what you want to do is you want to take a look at as many of them as you can, choose at least two to comment on, and then I would like for you to use these questions here to respond to these people. Now, again, what we're doing is we're giving you feedback. We're getting feedback for you so that you can improve your work, right? So the main point, right? Like looking at the main point. What was the main point? How clear was it? What could be done to make it clearer? What did you like and why? Appropriate, accessible support. That not only was support provided, but it was accessible. It was easy to understand. It was helpful. It really backed that up. If you go back to this I say, they say kind of thing, the ability to take someone else's words, thoughts, and ideas and present them in your own work. Reasoning and explanation. Now, this is key because a lot of times we come up with, like, hey, here's why I believe this, but you got to be able to get it across to somebody else. You got to be able to explain it to somebody else how the paper was organized, what kinds of things were done. Like, I like the way you organized it. You started, working, from here to here. You got us from here to here. You moved us from here to here, right? That organization. You put things together that go together. You put things in a logical order. And then, one of the things I think, obviously, when we think about peer review, peer edits, looking at each other's works, what can be done to make it better, right? And I think that's one big thing is to think about, like, okay, here's what I might change, right? Here's something that I might suggest. It could be wording, it could be organization, it could be tone, it could be the examples that you use, right? Any number of things. Now, obviously, when we're talking about the specific changes, we're not looking like, oh my God, this was so horrible because blank, right? It's like, hey, if I were writing this, this is something I might do. So always make sure that you're approaching it in that respect. As you are putting in your responses, please use these letters so that your reader knows exactly kind of what you're talking about and what you're referring to. As we've talked about before, we want to be able to provide more than the two required. We also want to think about talking to people on multiple days, getting multiple feedbacks, right? And it's important that you do this early in the first half of the week because this paper is due Friday. And so if you wait until Friday or Saturday or Sunday to put in these responses, they're not going to be very helpful. So you definitely need to get those in early. And then it is time to submit the final draft of the argumentative paper. Some things that I would like to remind you of when you get ready to submit this. First off, there should be no I. I think this. I think this. I wrote this. I read this. I whatever. Get all that out. You wrote the paper. So we assume that you do that, right? So take all that out. It's way too casual. Also take out the yous, right? When you think about that, like I'm talking directly to the reader, right? Like as if we were right there face to face. It's a little too casual. And also, too, depending on the topic, if it's like, what would you do if you were poor? It may be setting the wrong tone or it's asking the wrong question. Maybe it puts the reader in an awkward position. So, again, we want to avoid the first and the second person references. Please, please, please think about the way you organize your paper. How do you structure this? Do you start with the biggest point and you work down? Do you work from bottom up? Smallest to biggest? Do you think about this is the one that's really going to get the most traction? These things go together. These things go together. Think about paragraphs. New idea, new paragraph, right? So if you're talking in a paragraph about poverty levels, and then you want to move to free and reduced lunch, that should be a new paragraph, right? So think about those paragraphings, right? Think about that. Run that spell check, run that grammar check, use that tutor.com, use the writing lab on your campus, use Grammarly or some other web based service to check your paper, right? Like, don't let those things get away. And obviously, take a minute and check the style. Um, you know, I don't want to say points are cheap, right? Like, that's not it, but 10 points of your rubric is just the style, is just the documentation that you put in those citations. You have this paper in proper format, that you have that works cited or reference page, right? Think about that. Those are cheap, easy points. That's 5% of your paper. That's the difference between an A and a B, right? So definitely take some time to look over those pieces. Some other things just to kind of remind you of: the period goes after the citation, not before and not both. I do see that periodically. Okay. That as you are writing your paper, really be very aware of the wording. If it is hard to read, like it's choppy, like you have short sentence, short sentence, short sentence, short sentence, they're not grammatically incorrect, but it's harder to read. If you have a lot of passive voice, or if you have these like really big sentences that go 2, 3, 4 lines, right? They can be hard to read, and your reader can get lost in all that, right? Like, shorten those up, be clear, be concise, okay? Um, if you have a very long quote, you need to ask yourself, do I need all this? Can I paraphrase some of it? Do I need to quote all? If I really need to quote all of it, then I need to use that pulled quote format, right? Single space, bring in the margins on both sides. Um, I think you should always ask yourself that question of, is this something I need to quote? Remember, quotes are because there is no other way of saying it, or this is the best way of saying it. So if you say 9 out of 10 Americans do blank, is that really a good quote, right? So think about that. Be very discriminate, very picky about how you use those. In the half drafts that I've read, I've seen a lot of really good things. I've seen a lot of really good information. So please keep that up. I know a lot of people had some really strong starts. Just keep building on that, right? Like, really sell that point. Um, the reflective, the researched argument is due on Friday this week. Okay, is due on Friday this week. So please make sure you're working on that first. The reflection essay is due by the end of the module, by Sunday night. And this is where you just kind of take a look back and say, hey, here's what I did. I was here for 8 weeks. How do I think I did? How do I think I did? Where do I think I need to go from here? How did I get better? And what do I still need to work on? If you look at this list of objectives, these are the things that we were trying to do. You pick at least one of these objectives, right? Pick at least one of these objectives, and then talk about how you think you are doing with that, right? And then respond to at least one of the following questions, right? Now, these are things that we tried to focus on during the class. These are things that we really want to try to develop as skills. So you pick one learning objective and then you pick one of these questions and you explain how you did. Your final version of this should be somewhere around 300 words. That's about a page, right? That's about a page or so. Okay. Um, Here we're going to submit the researched argument, right? We're going to have this final draft of the research argument. Now, it looks like, okay, so we have this, like, we just talked about, like, all the instructions. That's just kind of get you thinking about what you need to do. This is where you submit the final version of this, right? And again, the researched argument, the argumentative, the persuasive, those are all the same, right? So this is where you put your final draft. And then we wrap it up with a course evaluation. And this is where the college asks you to take a minute and just let them know how the course went. Okay. Um, Please remember that people take this seriously. People do want to get your feedback. They want to hear what worked for you and what didn't work for you, what kinds of things could be improved upon, and what kinds of things were working and that they should continue. Um, to be honest, I won't see any of these results, right? I get an aggregate copy of some of them. If you make some comments and stuff, I get kind of like, like the paraphrase versions of them, so I can't tell who says what. None of these go directly against me, none of them go directly for me. So it's really a feedback about the course itself, and the college does ask you to be very honest and open about your responses. Guys, I got to tell you, this was a great semester. I saw a lot of you doing some really good work. I saw a lot of you really growing and really doing some impressive things. I saw improvement from beginning to end, and I hope that you continue with that. As you move forward onto your other classes, I hope that you can take these skills with you. We are at the end of the semester, so as you are wrapping up, please, again, I will tell you again, if you have any questions, please make sure you're reaching out to me. Don't suffer in silence. I don't want you to be lost. If you have something you need, please let me know. And as always, good luck, everybody.